We've been doing this podcast for 2.5 years now, and the most listened to episodes are always the ones talking about career and certifications in Treasury. So we decided to partner up with the AFP, the Association for Financial Professionals, so we can offer you a $100 discount code on all of the AFP's products. This includes, of course, the CTP, the Certified Treasury Professional, which is hands down the most renowned and recognized certification in Treasury out there. And of course, the access to the CTP exam prep platform as well. Check the link in the description to access to those discount codes and take your career to the next level. Jim, thank you so much for joining us on the Corporate Treasury 101 podcast. To begin with, could you maybe introduce our listeners to the AFP, the Association for Finance Professional, and its core mission in the finance industry, please?
Sure. Well, first, again, thank you for having me as well. AFP, the Association for Financial Professionals, is a professional organization or society. We are a not-for-profit that's focused very much on a mission, and that mission is to be a resource for our members who are in the Treasury and the FP&A or finance space to help them at every step of their career, from beginning all the way to throughout their career. So our focus every day for every individual member is how can we make them successful? How can we assist them in being successful in their careers in corporate treasury or corporate finance? And that's really the mission that drives us, our why statement that drives us every day to get better and to help our members be successful, our customers to be successful in their careers.
Awesome. And so maybe focusing on the corporate treasury part, could you walk us through a little bit what's the overall footprint of the AFP? Because you guys are doing lots of stuff. So
yes,
focusing maybe on corporate treasury because that's what most of our audience is about.
Sure.
Can you walk us through what you guys do there?
Sure. So with that mission statement or that why statement, there are many areas that we focus on. First, we have a Treasury certification, the Certified Treasury Professional designation, which has been in the global market for almost 40 years now. Over 60,000 people have passed the exam. You probably can double that, the number of people that have gone through the exam. I will say that we have been pleasantly surprised at the growth rate of that certification over the last 2 or 3 years, especially as we went through COVID, where it seems that, especially outside the U.S., in the APAC region, and we have an office in the APAC region, as well as in the Middle East and Europe, as well as the U.S., it is a global qualification. We test through Pearson VUE, so you can test anywhere around the world. So we've been delighted to see an increase in the above and beyond what we expected in terms of the Treasury qualifications. So we've been really excited about that. There are probably some reasons why, and we can talk about that at some other point. So the basis of what we do is we are the certifying body for the profession. And that's really kind of the stake that we put in the ground for the last 35 or 40 years. So in addition to the certification, we have a membership value proposition. So we produce a lot of content, white papers, guides, webinars that are really focused on, again, how can we help our members and our customers be successful in their jobs? And Treasury has expanded significantly, certainly in the 25 years that I've been at AFP. I didn't bring them, but I should have, I guess. If I showed you the first body of knowledge for the certification, it was probably an inch thick. While we have an exam prep platform that's an online platform, we actually do produce a book, Essentials of Treasury Management, and it's probably 6 inches thick. So while the people taking the certification groan a little bit at times, oh my God, I wish I could have taken that one, I think it demonstrates the success of the Treasury profession. I think it demonstrates how it has changed and grown. And if something is growing in terms of expectations for a profession, I think that's a good thing, that it's not decreasing. And so kind of the CTP has been the foundation for AFP as a certifying body, and we have developed another certification in financial planning and analysis, but I know for the purposes of this discussion, we'll talk about Treasury. Then we have a very large conference. It's the largest absolutely in the world by, I don't know how many factors. This year we had well over 6,000 people. That's kind of typical for the AFP annual event. Of course, it was a little, we had a little hiccup there during the COVID period, and but we were happy to see that it has expanded back to where it was originally. The core of that event, again, is education. We have over 130 educational sessions. So it's very much focused on content among 6 tracks. One thing that I would heavily emphasize that you cannot buy your way onto the AFP annual event at any sessions. Nothing is for sale in that regard in terms of education and training. We're militant about ensuring that when our members come to that event, they're hearing the best and the brightest, but they're also getting the corporate practitioner perspective. Now, that's not to say that we don't greatly value the vendors. We have a massive exhibit floor, and those are the organizations that help to support the profession. But if you think about the core element of the content, very much practitioner-driven. We're a practitioner-driven organization. So certification, training, multiple ways to do that. We do individual training as well as corporate training. Our events really make up our value proposition for people doing business with AFP and global, an office in Singapore, and we have a strategic partner in the Middle East as well.
Lots and lots to unpack here, Jim. Awesome. And to answer one of the questions you raised, why did it exceed your expectations? Probably because Treasury is all the hype. That's maybe why.
Well, yeah, I think when you go through, unfortunately or unfortunately, in my career at AFP, which is now 26 years long, 25 years, first it was 9/11, and then we went through the financial crisis, and then COVID being the last crisis. I don't know how many more crises I can deal with, but at least I've gotten AFP through those 3. But there's been, I think, so much emphasis. When you go through a crisis, it's always how much cash do we have on hand? How much working capital do we have? Do we have enough money to run the business? So I think that the emphasis on Treasury-related topics within organizations and even within our families, right? Do we have enough cash? Inflation, risk? How are we managing our own daily operations to fund houses and food and everything else that we have to pay for? And that's really the critical role that Treasury plays. So also I think that and please interrupt if you've got any questions, but I think that outside the U.S., I think there's been a greater recognition in more developing countries that the role of Treasury is an important role for organizations. And that's why I think we're seeing it in the Middle East, we're seeing it in the APAC region, and it's been a pleasant development for us.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Jim, would you say that corporate treasury is crisis-proof? Is that what it means, or even crisis-enabled? Crisis. Sorry if my French accent is getting in the middle of this.
Yeah, I think you always need a solid treasury team. I think it's like anything, depending on where the world is there a greater emphasis? I mean, when you have if companies have enough cash so that they can, spend it like, it's 1999, well, maybe it goes out of style, but I have a feeling that trying to fund the operations of organizations is pretty darn important. I do think there are trends that impact. I mean, whenever there's a financial crisis, finance is back in the spotlight even more. So, I mean, I think it kind of makes sense. I'm not suggesting that a good crisis is good for the CTP, but in this case, good crises and
a little bit.
Good. Now, COVID wasn't good for our event business. I can assure you of that.
For sure.
But even through the COVID, we saw increases in spending or increases in the number of people who wanted our certification. So it's a validation how important the role is in organizations, and that's, I think, at the end of the day, the most important thing for us is it validates the need for really qualified treasury professionals.
100%. We want to deep dive into all this, Jim. Maybe before doing so, and staying on the AFP part. So the footprint, I think, is pretty clear. You have an office in Singapore, you have a strategic partner in the Middle East, you guys have overall a global footprint with all the people and the memberships and so on.
Yes.
When was it created? How old is the AFP, out of curiosity?
AFP is about 45 years old. It actually started as kind of a club about 40 years ago. A group of individuals in the Midwest they decided, this cash thing, this is kind of important, and we want to create a organization, a little community of cash managers so that we can talk to each other and network and share ideas. And from that kind of small group in St. Louis, it then kind of grew into, maybe we need some kind of a certification. So they created the cash management credential, the CCM, Certified Cash Manager. And that continued to grow because the profession continued to grow. And one thing I know we'll talk about later, but Treasury is not taught at the undergraduate business schools. It's not taught in finance or, in finance departments. Treasury, to this day, is a learn-on-the-job type of profession. You talk to lots of treasurers who, have to, quote-unquote, kind of steal people from accounting or steal people from finance to come work for Treasury departments. So I think there was a recognition back then that they needed some kind of a standard, that says this is the body of knowledge for someone who wants to be, at the time, cash management. And then we changed the name of the certification back in the early 2000s, but it wasn't just a name change in moving to the Certified Treasury Professional. It really was a demonstration of how broadly that cash management function within organizations grew, and it now continues to grow. We update that certification every 3 years with a body of knowledge, a formal job analysis. I mean, there's a lot of rigor that goes into developing that certification. It does require continuing education credits. We do formal job analysis. Psychometricians get involved. It is an expensive investment, but one I think is reflected in the number of people that continue to take that exam and increase in terms of its popularity.
We've talked often about how Treasury is often, people accidentally find themselves in Treasury, and not that many people actually leave university thinking, yeah, I want to go become a treasurer. A lack of awareness about the role. And like you said, there's no formal route into it. It is to someone typically that... We were at an event, Guillaume and I, last month, the Treasury Career Corner Live in London with Mike Richards, who also has a podcast in Treasury. And there, the panel that was there, they were group treasurers of multi-billion-dollar companies. And one of them was like, yeah, I'm an accountant, I have my CPA. And these were the kind of backgrounds that these people were coming from. No one said, yeah, I've been in Treasury since I left university, right?
Or I wanted to be a treasurer when I was
Exactly. But no, they're all loving their jobs now, and they're all very highly qualified, running, like I said, billions and billions of dollars of revenue every year. So it's a common thing in the industry. I think you're right, and that's where the certification, I think, comes really important.
I would agree, and we can talk later about our university partner program, because I think this is exactly what we're trying to address as we think about our mission at AFP in terms of helping everyone at every stage of their career. One thing we're really focused on is people early career and people still at universities. Because if we can get people to understand there's this, great career out there, it's called corporate treasury, that's only going to create a larger, more qualified pool of candidates to move into the treasury field. So that is one of our objectives. It's not again, we could talk about our program, but it is aspirational on our part. So that maybe the treasurer doesn't have to go hunting internally for
resources.
For candidates. And at our conference, I interviewed a couple of our members, and they are, and not just treasury, but finance in particular, they're really finding it difficult to recruit. They're not finding the students coming out of university that really have any of the knowledge or practical skills. So it's a very expensive endeavor to, get them up to speed, identify them, and figure out which ones are going to stay. So if there's ways that we as a professional organization can help that process, then all the better.
Are you guys, I know you're not industry specific, but do you see a trend of industries within the CTP?
No, we really don't. I think the roots of Treasury and has always been larger companies. That's when, usually it's a revenue number that, whether it's $500 million or $1 billion and up, they create actually formal Treasury organizations. I mean, we have a Treasury function at AFP, but it's not called Treasury. It's sitting in the finance or accounting. So that's why our member companies tend to skew large. Multi-billion-dollar companies is largely our membership. I would say 2 to 3 billion and up probably is a typical AFP company that our members come from. So when you come to conference, you're going to see every recognizable name. We don't skew smaller companies because they don't have formalized Treasury functions. They have or Treasury organizations within their companies or organizations. So we tend to skew
Large.
Which doesn't mean that a small company probably shouldn't have good Treasury practices, but whether or not they have a separate Treasury function, it really, and as you know, those Treasury functions are small by and large. I mean, you go to these multi-billion-dollar companies and they might have 10 or 12 people. The bigger ones, maybe 30, 40, 50, but those are the real mega cap companies. So Treasury has a unique position in the finance organization, but they tend to be relatively small compared to, say, finance or accounting or some of the other functions in finance.
That's definitely the common thread.
And obviously you know that.
Yeah, we've been hearing that definitely a lot. But like Treasury's also evolved. So yes, it is for the larger companies typically, but the role of a treasurer has definitely changed over time. What have you seen in your very short 25 years in the AFP role, Jim, and hopefully to 25 more? How has the role of the treasurer adapted over your tenure, and how's the AFP adapted with it?
Right. So as I mentioned, if you looked at the first essentials of cash management, it was probably, as I said, about an inch thick. And today we update that body of knowledge every 3 years, as I mentioned, with a formal job analysis, which means we go out into the profession and we really want to understand what is the actual day-to-day role that treasurer plays. This is not a theoretical certification. This is what they are doing on a daily basis, 365 days a year. And through that formal job analysis, which we do every 3 years, we can determine from the baseline of the prior certification, what has changed in terms of their areas of responsibility. And as you've rightly pointed out, it has expanded significantly. So it's just not cash management, it's payments, it's security, cybersecurity, it's bank relationship management, it's forecasting and budgeting, and it just has expanded the role of Treasury, risk management. And I mean, it has expanded significantly within the finance function.
All topics we've covered in previous episodes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I'm not telling your audience anything new in terms of how it's expanded. I think the challenge for finance in general, get on my soapbox a little bit here, and Treasury in particular, is that Treasury can sometimes be a very insular position, insular part of an organization, the Treasury function. And I think the challenges for those treasurers and senior Treasury people going forward is becoming more visible within the organization, playing a more strategic role, and playing that business partner role. Now, that's not always easy because unfortunately or fortunately, finance does have that role of, hey, no, when it comes to things like spending money. But nevertheless, I think those effective treasurers and the future will be to be that effective business partner, so that the business units really understand the role that working capital and cash play within the organization, and have, be able to understand how these financial statements really work and why it's important. So I think that's kind of the future. it's been talked about a lot, and I'm sure you've had multiple podcasts about this. In my presentations, I talk about left brain versus right brain skills. Treasurers have those left brain skills. They have those great in finance, great analytical skills. Let's get that right brain involved a little bit on the communication skills and and things like intellectual curiosity and creativity. You don't think about creativity when you think about finance, but yeah, you do need to have that creative part of you that's working with other individuals to get them to understand why it's important that you're asking them these questions, and for them to think about when they're looking at new products and services and expanding their business, where the role of cash really does play. So, and I think that's the challenge for finance and treasury going forward. Will always be somewhat of the challenge.
100%. To finish with the AFP, Jim, what's the membership structure exactly? How does it work? Like, let's say I want to become a part of the association. What does that entail? What should I do? What are the commitments I should take, or the things I should expect to get? How does it overall work?
So membership is one of our products. We are a membership organization, kind of legally. We're a membership mission-driven organization through our tax status as a not-for-profit here in the U.S. So members, you don't have to transact with AFP. You don't have to be a member to transact with AFP. And we don't have any requirements if you take the qualification. Now, we want you to be our members because we think we're providing a valuable content for you to be successful, because and also, connecting you to other members, and that networking is critical. I think a lot of times, people get insulated in their own organizations, and when they realize, hey, there's this whole group of other people, like-minded people who can help me on my day-to-day problems through our community boards and things like that, and that becomes just a massive resource. I look at our career community board every day to see what questions people are asking. So membership is $495 US. We provide, just a lot of content, all practitioner-driven content. We have internal subject matter experts who are helping to put that content together. We have webinars, training. It's a really comprehensive program, products and services that'll help you be successful on a day-to-day basis. And, I always think $495, that's 1 hour of a lousy attorney. So, if you think about the investment that you're making of $495 to really help you be successful in your career every day and have you connected to other like-minded professionals that are more than willing to help you, it's certainly worth the price of admission and then some, in my view.
Couldn't agree more. And I think you highlight a very important point here, which is the community aspect. Not only are you part of the association and do you get all those resources and this content and this educational content to help you grow your career, but you're also, as you very well highlighted, get part of this community of professionals that are either at the same level as you and who want to progress as well. So they might as well just exchange with you and say, hey, I'm doing this, or I'm doing that wrong, and I'm trying to improve at that, and exchange best practices, but also get inspired by people higher in the hierarchy and saying, hey, this is what the career track looks like if you want to get to that point, and this is what you could do, and this is what you shouldn't do, and this is how I can help you potentially get there. And yet again, the other part of it, where for the people who are a bit below you hierarchically in the community, that you can mentor, help, which will also help you in your career. So there is this whole aspect of community which is critical, and you can hardly replicate. Actually, that's the thing that's ultra valuable there.
Yeah,
super interesting.
Yeah, in my view, you can't really put a price on it. Although I put a $495.
Indeed.
No, seriously. First of all, in answering those questions on the community board, there's no I'm a treasurer. So it's people want to give back, and those are the people that are participating. So, any question, and I've never seen anyone say, I'm not going to answer that question. You get response from people who really want to help you, and that's what a community is all about. If you come to the AFP annual conference for those 3 days, it is amazing how people come together as a community and want to support each other. I think, in this world these days, we often seem very isolated at times, or isolated individually, working from home, or isolated even in your own organization, and to realize there are other like-minded people who, guess what? They're having the same issues you are. There's probably nothing unique that you're going to ask on that board, community board, for assistance that someone hasn't gone through before. And I think just knowing that there's a community of like-minded people who are going to give you great answers. And I've heard from people say, this has saved me tens of thousands or millions of dollars, or helped, I didn't, because someone steered me in the right direction, or said, this is the right resource to go to, or look at the conference session that's been, that's on the website that you can listen to and hear how people grappled with those types of questions. So, these days, I think we're all looking for someone to hug us a little bit and say, hey, we're willing to help you out. And when it comes to Treasury and financial planning and analysis, we're the place.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait to join you for the 2024 Nashville edition.
Jim, seeing you in Nashville.
Exactly, 20 to 23rd of October, I believe. Is that right?
Yes.
Awesome. Will be great. Talk us through the multi-faceted role of the AFP, Jim. I think you touched upon it a bit earlier, but let's deep dive a little bit. So let's focus on the events first. Tell us more about Nashville and the edition so we are recording right now, it's early December 2023. You had the conference less than a month ago.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly, in San Diego. What goes on during this conference? What topics are you talking about? Who do you talk to? Who do you have talk at? Like 6,000 treasurers, that's massive. Like, what happens in those conferences?
So as I mentioned, we have 130 educational sessions. We have, I believe, 6 to 8 actual tracks, payments tracks, career services track, FP&A track, bank relationship tracks. So we have specific treasury tracks that are broken down. Again, I want to emphasize that every one of those sessions, along with our internal staff and our internal subject matter experts, we get over, for those 130 educational sessions, we get over 650 submissions for sessions. So it's not quite like getting it to Oxford or Harvard or Princeton, but it's pretty close. And we really focus on those educational sessions, that they are focused on how to help that practitioner solve the problem. So while yes, we'll have non-practitioners on those conference sessions, the focus really has to be bringing people in who actually can help you solve those problems. And I will tell you, we measure every track that we get feedback. We get feedback from the attendees of each one of those sessions, so we can look at conference tracks. We measure the speaker effectiveness. We measure the topic effectiveness. So it's the one thing I would say. I don't know if it keeps me up at night, but I certainly, when I have to open up the PDF that says, here are the conference evals, it gives me a little bit of, oh God, please. And we report these to our board of directors. So by session, by track, by subject matter. I will tell you, and it's on a 5-point scale, so I'll tell you this year, I think we averaged like 4.6, 4.7. So I take a lot of pride in our organization, really identifying the topics that people care about and getting the right speakers. So we also have so we bring industry experts from all over the world to the event. We also have very big name speakers. I'm actually surrounded by all the big name speakers that we've had at the event. That typically is Sunday. This year it was John Cena, who actually was fantastic. But if I look around my office, I see Richard Branson, I see Shaquille O'Neal, I see Bill Clinton, George Bush, Condoleezza Rice. We could go down the list. And we do that on Sunday to really kind of set the stage. It's not meant to be a finance or treasury person. It really is to give someone, we have Layla Ali, it's just someone to give a different perspective that starts that Sunday off in a way that kind of sparks that enthusiasm, excitement, because after that it's two and a half straight days of real technical discussions. Although I will say we have a career services track that is probably the most popular and gets great scores because we really want to focus on not only the technical side, it's that left brain, right brain we talked about, but also how can we help them be successful in their careers. So there's that aspect of it as well. And then our Tuesday speaker was Ian Bremmer, who was amazing. If you're familiar with Ian in terms of, he's one of the gurus of political risk. And right now, there's a lot of political risk, more than I think any of us would like in the world. So his perspective on political risk was amazing. We've had Adam Grant. I mean, we have a lot of great speakers. We want to challenge people to think differently, which is why we bring in speakers that also aren't just treasury or finance focused, give them an outside perspective on the world. And I think it's very effective. We have a huge exhibit floor. We have about 250 exhibitors. So every big name in banking, treasury, technology is sitting on our exhibit floor. It's a village. It looks like a village. I love to see that village, especially after COVID when there was no village for 1 year. But that's an opportunity for people to talk to their current providers, service providers, learn from others. We have a lot of practical demonstrations. So I'm guaranteeing both of you are coming so you can explain it, because I think that once somebody comes to the AFP annual conference, we got them, because it's just an amazing event. And the networking aspect, again, it's people seeing people just like them, confronting the same issues they are confronting. And everyone, for the most part, really wanted to help each other out. So it doesn't get any better than that.
Jim, I want to talk with Shaquille O'Neal about treasury. How do we make that happen?
Shaq talks about what Shaq wants to talk about, and I'm not...
Probably makes sense.
I'm not going to tell him otherwise. That's the thing for we don't try to ask Shaq to talk about, like we didn't ask John Cena to talk about treasury, although you would be amazed. I will tell you, these are very good business people. So Shaq's a hell of a businessman. We've had Magic Johnson many years ago. Magic Johnson was a billionaire, right? And Richard Branson, although I asked him, he said, I know nothing about finance. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. But a lot of these individuals who aren't necessarily what you think are, not necessarily finance, but they've been pretty successful in their business lives. And then they've been, whether they're a great athlete, whatever that is, that magic gets translated to anyone in any profession. What is that little nugget of what has motivated them, what has driven them to success, what they've learned from failure? I think those are things we all like to hear, and I think we always think, oh, these people never had any challenges or anything. And then when you listen to them, they pretty much bare their soul. And I don't know, maybe either misery loves company, or we all love to see, that we can relate to others. So, and it creates excitement too. I mean, I love seeing people come flying in on Sunday afternoon because they want to get up front to see a big name speaker and, with their phones and take pictures. It's pretty cool.
I heard great things about John Cena, by the way. I spoke to some people. We weren't there, but I spoke to some people that were at San Diego, and the first thing they said was, guys, John Cena was there. He was amazing.
He was amazing. Took the microphone. He did his little Oprah thing, where taking questions from the audience, and he was a guy who he was. I will tell you, the other great thing about this job has been, I get to meet these people backstage. Yeah. He was just a really nice guy. I can't always say that about everyone I met, but I won't tell you the ones I didn't think were nice. I'll only tell you the ones that I think were nice people, and they all were by and large very nice. But he was a really good guy, and you could tell that he wanted to give back, and he was. I was a little skeptical, but boy, he knocked it out of the park. He was something. Oh, come on. He was really something. Good guy.
The world champ.
Yeah.
So talk us a bit more, Jim, about that left brain, right brain thing, and more in the aspect of, you seem to be in your training sphere, not just trying to train the hard skills, and also make sure that treasurers acquire the soft skills. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, a couple of things. One of the things, and maybe it's changing at the undergraduate level now. But when I previously kind of talked at presentations, a lot of people either come up with accounting or finance. I mean, that's really in most business schools, and we can talk about that because I'd like to change some of that a little bit. First of all, if you're coming up the accounting or finance, you're not taught to make mistakes, right? You got to balance the debits and credits. But so much of the job these days, I mean, having those technical skills is that's just kind of basic. That's expected that you're going to be able to have those basic skill sets. But we live in a world, I mean, I'm not telling anyone anything new here, but the people that are going to distinguish themselves in those careers are people that can talk to other people. They can explain complicated concepts without using acronyms and able to tell a story. And being a storyteller is a skill set. It is not something that I'm a good storyteller. I happen to be a lousy storyteller, so when I'm trying to tell a story, I spend my time, what's the story I want to tell? And how am I going to communicate this story so that I get people, one, interested, and two, try to make that point? Now, those are skill sets that accounting and finance typically, they don't have storytelling classes, although I think they probably should. Maybe that's what I'll do in my retirement. I'll teach storytelling. But it's also realizing that, unless you're going to have a job where you're just going to be looking at a spreadsheet or you're not going to be dealing with other people, and I don't know exactly what that job is, then you're going to have to deal with people. And I'm going to tell you a little story. So I was asked by an acquaintance I met. He teaches out at UCLA at the undergraduate or graduate, well, both. I think it was a class. And these were all, he was teaching a leadership course, and they're all in finance, but many of them were real quants. They were doing stuff I didn't understand. It's just like watching Oppenheimer. I mean, it sounded great, but I didn't understand anything they were talking about. And so I talked about AFP's culture, how important it is to work with people, respect in the workplace. All of those things are really important to me personally as someone who works with other people. And at the end of the session, I wasn't there. He asked people, how many people want to work with Jim, would work for a company like Jim's? Well, he said maybe half the group. Okay, I was fine. Other half, why don't you want to work for a company or work with someone like Jim who really expects you to, interact with other people, work together, be respectful? Half no. Why? I don't want to have to do all those things. I just want to do my job. Well, I would love to go back to those people and say, good frickin' luck. Unless you can find a job where you're not dealing with other people. So, you have to make a choice in life and give them that opportunity. But I think those right brain skills of being able to communicate, and you look at the top level CFOs or corporate treasurers, they have those skill sets. They're able to communicate with others. They are able to show empathy. They're able to explain these things. They're just good people persons. And I think to be a leader, you have to be a good people person. But it's not always something that people who gravitate towards finance or accounting think about. I just think it has to be, and it's a learned skill. I mean, it can be learned. And I think that this is something that I'm very passionate about. We had Daniel Pink speak. He's written a book about this. And he talks about those are the people that are going to be most successful in the world, who have the ability to be that right brain, to have that intellectual curiosity, creativity, the ability to influence and speak to others in a way that's not, pointing a finger and say, you better do this or you're out of here. So.
No, 100%. If anything, it's a competitive advantage, right? At the very least. I mean, everyone that comes into finance, like you said, is very analytically orientated. If you can be analytically orientated with the ability to communicate and persuade and convince and work with other people, then that's always going to be a competitive advantage.
Well, right. And give them a choice. I mean, if you don't really want to move up in the organization and just want to do that job for the rest of your life, cool, yeah. That's fine. But make sure that you understand the implications of that.
And especially, especially in the role of treasurer, right? A lot of the time, what we hear treasurers complain about is that they don't get enough resources, which is a negotiation inside an organization. Anyone that's worked inside a company knows that there's money going around. You just have to have the best business case to have that money spent on you, which is a negotiation,
Right.
which is a convincing skill, which is the ability to be able to portray the needs that your treasury department is fulfilling to the company and the importance of those in a way that influences and convinces.
Right, and it can't be just during budget
Exactly.
time. And you have to put the time in, 365 days a year to develop those relationships. And I've been part of, and kind of analogous to that, I've been part of, CEO groups where they'll say, I want to bring someone in for 3 days so we can change the culture of the organization. And then 3 days after that, well, you'd be amazed.
3 days.
Well, I had 3-day off-site. Why aren't these people, doing what we said we were going to do? Because it's not a 3-day job. Culture, communication, these things are 365-day-a-year jobs or whatever. Take out the weekends. I don't know what the math is there. But my point being that if you're going to say something, you really have to be committed to doing it and not just in this kind of short window. And you need to work towards being a true business partner, and they see the value of the function. I don't care what the function is. But if you just show up for the day that, good luck.
Set your laptop. No, indeed. And culture, at least what I've seen, having worked in large organizations and then ran teams myself, is top down. And most people in influential positions and tops of companies understand that it's top down. And therefore, they want to make sure that the other people in their organization that are running the show are able to do that culture setting, that lead by example, that convincing, that those soft skills. And then, so they're only going to promote up to their level, the people that they believe, okay, this person's going to be a good leader overall.
Culture is one of those things, Hassan, that it has to be at the top. It's not something that can flow up. And there has to be a commitment, and there has to be a sustained commitment. I could talk for days about this because I see that, people do things and say things that are counter to what they think they're doing from a culture standpoint. It's hard work, and it's every day you have to focus on that corporate culture, but it absolutely starts at the top. And, employees aren't stupid. If someone's speaking out of one side of the mouth but doing something differently, that just will kill it right there. And people see it and recognize it. And then that's where trust breaks down. But that's for a whole nother podcast.
That's another.
That one I could talk to for days because I'm passionate.
We'll have to get you back on for that for sure, Jen.
Yeah.
In terms of thought leadership, you mentioned you guys write white papers and whatnot as well. And that's a big part of the value equation for members in the AFP. Can you tell us a bit more about what else you guys do around thought leadership?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned, we have, and we're blessed with 2 subject matter experts internally, one in Treasury and one in FP&A, who have been practitioners, and their job really is to reach out into the community to really understand what are the day-to-day issues that anyone in Treasury or anyone in FP&A are being challenged with, and so we have multiple advisory groups. We have an APAC advisory group. We have a Middle Eastern. Based out of Egypt, but that's Egypt and Saudi and the rest of the Middle East. And we have volunteer groups here that are constantly working with the subject matter experts who, as I mentioned, have practical skills. They've been in organizations in those roles. And then we take that information all the time and understanding what kind of the hot buttons are and what's important and what's challenging, and then we'll create content around that, whether it's a webinar or in some cases podcast, but more typically it's a webinar, and then we'll do a white paper around that webinar, a thought leadership piece around that, and then we'll have a webinar around those topics. So we're trying to lead the profession, identify those issues that we know are broadly impacting someone in corporate treasury, and want to help inform the members. It's all part of that, our mission, which is to help our members be successful at every stage of their career. So it's looking at, from core blocking and tackling issues to more strategic issues as you get into the treasurer role. But it's that continuum that we're very focused on to help people at every stage of their career to be successful. If they can say, AFP helped me get there, or was part of my career journey, then we've succeeded.
The job is done. And I think we are
It's never done, but yes.
work in progress and
Right.
Getting some
We're all
results.
work in progress.
I think we are scratching the surface here, Jim, because you guys are doing a lot. Can you tell us a bit more about publications that you do? You have data activities, you have surveys. First of all, why is it important to you and to the AFP? Why are you doing it? And also, what's the distinction between the stuff that you will put out for all the people versus the stuff that you put out for the community and the members only? Because saying that you do a lot of stuff is the least we can say. Why is it important for you, especially those very targeted activities? And what's the split between we keep that for our members because that's exclusive information and you need to be a part of it to have access to it, versus this is something we need to show to the world so this will be accessible by everybody?
Yeah, so we do distinguish between member and non-member content for the very reason that you mentioned, that we want to have a member value bundle or proposition for someone who wants to be an AFP member, so they'll have access to webinars, to CPE credits. That's a lot of part of what we do to providing not only providing the content, but the CTP does require, I believe, 42 credits to keep up with your certification. We do have a continuing education requirement for our certifications, which is best in class. I don't think anyone can say, I've taken a certification, now I don't need to know anything more. No, that's just kind of baseline foundational knowledge, and you do need to know more because the world is changing. So we do bifurcate our content. Some of it's specifically just for members, whether it's a webinar or specific content piece. And then we just, we kind of look at from a social media standpoint. We'll put out, a blurb about some of the white papers, and then people, if they want to get the full, the knowledge, then you have to be an AFP member. It's a delicate balancing act, and one I don't necessarily understand. So, the person, the woman who's kind of heads up our that department is, focusing on the member value piece versus and for membership, and then what we want to send out to the rest of the world. So I think it's more art than science, but clearly we have member-only content versus content that we'll put out for the world. Pretty typical business model from that
100%.
standpoint. We look at membership as one of our products. I mean, you can be a customer at AFP and not be a member, but we'd love for you to be a customer and a member of AFP. So we do things to make it clear that you'll get out. And for instance, you can't be part of the community board if you're not a member. Maybe in many cases, the most valuable resource, because you see the questions that are being asked, you get very specific answers to those questions, and you're getting them answered by people that actually have done it before. And to me, that's worth the price of admission right there, because if the boss comes in and says, hey, I need the answer to this and I need the answer tomorrow, and you have I have no idea. Well, you're not going to say that to the boss, but get on the community AFP board. Hey, the boss just came in, he asked me this question, can you help me? You'll get the answer. And how valuable is that? And there's no restrictions to it. So to me, it's maybe one of the more valuable things that we provide to our people who become AFP members.
100%. And tell us more about, so you said you're looking at that board all the time. You told us that you do all these follow-ups on the data from the conferences, Jim. You mentioned that you have these FP&E and treasury professionals that are constantly surveying. You guys seem like a very data-orientated organization overall. And so I'm sure you have amazing insights into today, as of December 4th, 2023. What is the biggest problem that treasurers are facing?
Well, I think, yes, we are. I think I would say we're content driven in that we're not internally saying this is what they should think. We're trying to get a sample with people that really know what's going on in the world, and then develop products and services that are going to help the members be successful. So you see that, for instance, in our conference. And the way we do that is we have a conference planning committee made up all of practitioners. We divide them into different groups: payments, treasury, risk, career services. So we actually bring in the practitioners. As I mentioned, we had over 650 submissions. So we start with those, say, submissions per conference. That in and of itself is a great indicator of what are the topic areas that are on the minds of not only practitioners, but also all of our service providers, whether it's the banks, technology companies, payments companies, because if they're sending in proposals on these particular topics, that gives us enormous insight into what are the topics that their clients are dealing with. So that's great. I mean, and that is the advantage, because sometimes the service providers have a better concept, or they have a broader perspective than others. So it's doing that, using our advisory committees, our councils as well, on that meet in some cases every month to talk about what are the issues that they're facing. I think right now, I mean, no surprise, political risk is huge. Anything related to payments, cybersecurity. With Treasury, it's blocking and tackling. It's the issues maybe get more complicated, but they don't necessarily change. I still think there's probably a lot of room for an impact of technology yet, but I don't think we've seen it. I think there's a lot of talk about it, but I don't know how many. It's unclear to me how many Treasury or finance organizations have really adopted all that much technology or artificial intelligence or anything into their processes. I think those are always emerging issues, but quite frankly, it's the blocking and tackling of what Treasury has to do every single day. How do they do it more efficiently? How do they manage risk? How do they minimize risk and have a clear pipeline or visibility into where the cash is in the company?
The fundamentals, indeed.
It is. I mean, it is. I mean, if, in a good way, it's Groundhog Day. I mean, we always get amazed when we look at, what are the issues on that community board, and my God, they tend to be same issues, which isn't necessarily bad, but I mean, they're a very focused group of individuals, right? They have a clear mission and vision, and they gotta do it.
Super clear. What about you, Jim? So you've been CEO and president of the AFP for a very long time now. What does that role entail? We had a little bit of a chat about this beforehand, about what is, you are the culture of the AFP as an organization, and then all of its members as well. And in some weird way, although you're technically customers, you definitely set the tone of the experience that they have, right, as being the leadership of the AFP overall. What does your role entail, and how do you set that culture?
Well, I mean, the culture internally is kind of, that's my role and responsibility as the CEO, to set the culture of the organization. But I think that culture internally reflects how we want to be perceived to the outside world, and that is very important to me internally. I can't control the world, but I can control the world of AFP to some extent. And so having a great respect for people, for people's opinion, for diverse opinions, to be respectful in the work, to be respectful of one another and different opinions, to get by, if a decision is made, to get behind decisions, you have your say. And I think the most important thing for me has always been, I want everyone at AFP internally to be successful. Why would I not want them to be? It's the, if everyone is successful, then it makes my job easier, and I'm all for making my job easier. I also, I am a big person, someone who believes in pushing decisions down. I think I've shocked some people when I said a good week is that I haven't had to make any decisions. So if I don't have to make any decisions, then everyone else is making those good decisions, right? And I'm just totally fine with that. I think
it's because it's tiring, Jim. Come on.
What's tiring? Make decisions all day? Yeah. Why would I want to do that? I've never understood that. I got to make every decision. Okay, well, why? And if you're making every decision, then everyone's managing up. And I think one of the things certainly for new leaders is, I always say to them, they're going to try to manage up on you. You're going to get, what do you think? And the answer is, it doesn't matter what I think. You tell me what you think, and then we can go from there. So we could talk about culture a lot. We have a very well-defined culture. I will tell you that 50% of our compensation is based on your culture, and we measure it, and then 50% is based on actual performance on the job. I think what this reflects for us, though, is our why statement and how we think about our customers. Because if you come to the AFP event, that staff we have a relatively very small staff that runs the conference and runs AFP, but they are 100% committed to our mission statement and our why statement. And there's clear transparency in our organization in terms of what's going well, what's not going well, what do we need to address, and how all of us collectively together have to do our jobs and be successful. That I really do believe in rising tides lifts all boats. So I think that gets reflected in when you see the conference, when you interact with the AFP staff, and how we're very much focused on our why statement, which is how are we helping our members, customers be successful every day? Are we fulfilling that mission? And I think it's the more transparency in terms of what the expectations are and what we're measuring, the better off. And that's kind of been our focus. We've certainly, no organization is perfect, and, you make mistakes. And for us, it's, okay, acknowledge the mistake, clean it up, and just don't do it again, right? Unless it's something really egregious, but quite frankly, that's never happened in my 26 years of something egregious. So I think that outlook on the world and how we look at our why statement, the culture piece, all reflect how we try to fulfill our mission as a mission-driven organization for the success of the individual practitioner. So hopefully it all fits together.
What's your next big project, Jim? Spoiler alert, if you can say, interested into understanding obviously AFP is big, to say the very least. Lots going on. Lots of content, amazing events, the treasury certification out there that we're going to talk about in a minute. What's next on your roadmap? What would you like to see implemented by or with the AFP that hasn't been done yet, or that is work in progress? What's the next thing for the AFP?
Well, I think it's continued to maintain the preeminence of the CTP certification, and I think I mentioned that we have seen over the last 2-3 years a real growth outside the United States, which to us is fantastic. And it's not something we just said, we're surprised. We've been trying to, certainly with the establishment of our APAC office in Singapore, as well as the partnerships we have in the Middle East. We've embarked on, I don't want to give too many state secrets here, but, training partners throughout the world who will in their local areas. We're not big enough, don't have the resources to introduce the CTP at the local market in Vietnam, for instance. So we have partners.
Right.
So it's continuing that, looking for global partnerships. We're very open to working with individual training companies. I still think there's a lot of potential growth in the APAC region. China in particular could be a huge market for us. Obviously there are political, ups and downs there. But prior to COVID, I've been into China multiple times. I'm always it's interesting when you're talking to people, they kind of realize, well, we might not be best friends, but we really need to be friends. We'll agree to disagree, but you know what? There is a codependency there. I might get myself in trouble by that. But from a business standpoint, that's what I've seen. And I think when you're talking corporate treasury, it's not exactly, I'm not trying to solve world peace here. It's treasury. And I think that, effectively running organizations and having an effective treasury department and having those skills in other parts of the developing world is a really important skill for countries. I read recently, Indonesia's trying to move in a different direction. In fact, their Minister of Education, I think he went to Brown and has a Harvard MBA. People realize that skills-based training is going to be critical for organizations, for governments, for the world, right? And that's what we're in. We're in the skills-based training business with our two certifications. So I think there's a lot of room for growth. The CTP, I think there's a huge potential growth market for financial planning and analysis, just because the sheer numbers are much larger in terms of how big those organizations are. So I think skills-based certifications, badging, things that help with recognition of specific skill sets are going to be important for employees and employers as the world moves forward. And then I know we've talked about this briefly. We're also focused at university partnerships because after you get kind of after those top tier schools, universities are recognizing and colleges are recognizing that their customer actually is the student. And if your customer's going to be happy, they got to get a job. Big surprise. So one of our big initiatives, one of my personal initiatives, and we've got a university partnership program, is to get undergraduate business education to move beyond just accounting and pure finance, to look at both Treasury and FP&A as potential undergraduate, either minors or concentrations. At the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University is called a workshop. And the beauty of this is neither of those two professions are taught at the undergraduate level. So anyone going into Treasury, anyone going into financial planning analysis, largely is just walking in with just an undergraduate business education, which is fine, but it's not really skills-based. So it's embedding the curriculum of our certifications into these undergraduate schools to help the students really have both the theoretical and the practical knowledge. Whether they actually end up taking the certification, we'll have to see. But the fact is, if you've got our exam prep platform internally, you certainly can speak the language of business, of Treasury, of FP&A, as opposed to someone that hasn't had that exposure. And then if you think about it, the beauty is we've got thousands of companies that would love to hire someone coming out of university who actually had a knowledge of corporate treasury, actually knew what the treasurer did, as opposed to the treasurers, trying to find someone to grab in the corridor to say, hey, you're smart, come work for me. And so it is a great marriage. And I will say, we're working with 2 accreditation organizations that are global. So this is a global initiative. And we make it, quite frankly, a real plug and play. Universities tend to be very bureaucratic. There's a big shocker. And there aren't tenured professors in Treasury or FP&A. They tend to be in accounting and finance. So we make it easy for the universities to adopt our program. We actually help them with a curriculum. By and large, every undergraduate program in finance is going to have basic courses, but it's kind of putting a ring around them and saying, if these students take these courses and then we add a couple of extra courses to this, then they really come out with a real deep knowledge of corporate treasury or financial planning and analysis. So it's kind of extending our why statement into the university level, so that that there's a familiarity there at the undergraduate level, and then as they come out, helping them throughout their whole career. So sorry, long-winded, but it's my big passion. And
can tell.
Yeah, well, and my kids are all grown up, and but if I was spending $50,000 a year, I certainly want my child to come out and have a job, after $200,000 plus investment. And it'd be nice if the people I was spending, stroking the check to actually cared as well. So I'm seeing real recognition from the universities that we've spoken to, who realize that now is a mission for them. They've got to be able to provide their students with the real world skills to get a job and then be successful in those jobs.
Yeah. Jim, I think we've touched upon it quite sometimes in this episode, the CTP, the Certified Treasury Professional certification. Let's deep dive into that. So what does the CTP signify? Why is it important? And why is it a significant credential in the field of treasury, if not the treasury certification out there?
Well, we like to think of it as the treasury certification, but we don't have to have that
Imagine.
today. I always say competition is good, but not necessarily. Well, as we've talked a lot in the last hour or so, treasury isn't a topic that is taught at the undergraduate level. The body of knowledge of the CTP, runs well over 1,000 pages on our exam prep platform. Some of the topics are addressed at the undergraduate, business schools, but they're not taught at the undergraduate business schools or MBA programs, quite frankly. So we don't have to rehash this one, but it's pretty clear that, no one comes out of the, saying, I'm interested in corporate treasury. In many cases, the other objective is these students don't even know there's a profession called corporate treasury. And so we hear that over and over again. In that environment, the CTP really sets the standard for the treasury globally. As I said, it's a very extensive process that we go through every 3 years to update that body of knowledge. It is practitioner based. It's based on a formal job analysis. We create the body of knowledge for the certification, and then we have a completely separate group that actually are item writers that write the questions for the exam. And this is sometimes people taking the certification don't realize this, that the body of knowledge there's not going to find every answer in there. That's why we have two separate groups, one that looks at updating the body of knowledge, and we have a separate group of item writers that are writing questions, practitioners. Everyone's a practitioner, because it's not about memorizing 1,000 pages of content. It's how can you apply those concepts into a real world. So this is a real world practitioner-based foundational knowledge of corporate treasury. So it's a recognition that if you pass the exam, that you have a good foundational knowledge of corporate treasury. It doesn't say that you're going to know everything, but it is the stamp of approval that this individual, if they can pass the exam, have a good understand and workable and foundational skills to be in corporate treasury. And now, if you see most treasury jobs, you'll see the CTP is required. A lot of banks require their transaction bankers to have this certification as well, because it's really gives those the bankers a real insight into the practical role that the treasury or treasurer plays within the organization. It's been well established over 35 plus years. As I said, we've tested over 60,000 people. We get 4,000 or 5,000 people a year who take that exam or who sign up for the exam. And if you talk to people that have it, it is the gold standard for someone who wants to be in corporate treasury, and it demonstrates competence, and it gives the boss at least the comfort that this person has really studied. It's for the 6 months or so and taken a rigorous exam, and so I think it's that rigor and it's the reputation of the CTP that it is I like to say kind of the gold standard for someone who wants to be in corporate treasury.
All right. So what does the journey look like for somebody who would like to undertake or obtain the CTP certification? You mentioned 6 months of studying, then a thorough exam. What does it look like? Like what one would expect to have to study for the CTP? What are the areas they touch upon? Give us the whole picture.
Yeah, it's pretty extensive. I will tell you, I've had corporate treasurers who have taken it because, for the AFP board, we'd like to have, people that have the exam. And I'll tell you, they're sweating it, taking that exam, because what you don't want to do is say, well, I've been in corporate treasury for the last 10 years. I can do this. I mean, so it is a comprehensive undertaking in all the topic areas that one would think were typically a treasury, but one necessarily didn't learn. And then being able to take those concepts, as I said, to apply them in real world circumstances, depending, again, on how much you maybe been in treasury, or if you're new to treasury, then I think you're going to have to, study a lot harder. The mistake some people make is, well, I've been in treasury or I've been in FP&A and I can do this. Well, I'll tell you what happens. If you don't study, you fail. It's just the way it works. Mm-hmm. And I think, and it's a proctored exam. We use peer review, so you can test anywhere, literally around the world. It's I believe a 3-hour exam. It is multiple choice exam.
Multiple choice, right?
Yeah, it's not an easy exam. I mean, our pass rate is 50-60%. You have to study for this thing. It's not a given. And
that's insane.
The FP&A exam is a 2-part exam. That second part of that exam is budgeting and forecasting, and you actually have to build a model in an Excel-like spreadsheet. And It's a real challenge, and that's actually, quite frankly, where a lot of people, whether you're in Treasury and or FP&A, they really, you can't, the ability to build that model from the ground up can be challenging, which is good. I mean, we've always had this internal debate: should it be easy? Should it be and I think we all believe that, look, for a role that you're playing in finance that is so important, we always err on the side of this should be a rigorous exam that really tests the individual's ability to take these concepts and be able to apply them in the real world. And we're not making any pretense. This is foundational knowledge. It's credibility. It's credibility for the individual. It's credibility for the organization that's hiring people. And we've been fortunate that it has a great reputation and great brand in the market. And we don't compromise at all in terms of its rigor and the work that goes into it.
100%. We were speaking with Paul Barnhurst, Guillaume and I, in a separate, for our other podcast actually, and off camera he was telling us about when he sat the FP&A course that he did. And it was just when we had signed our partnership together, so we kind of brought it up with him, and he was like, that's a real certification. And the reason he said it was a real certification is like, because they don't just hand it to you. And they're not going to just let you pass and make sure that you pass. There are some that are just like, okay, you didn't pass. Look at these questions again. Here was the right answer. Now, can you sit the question again? Okay, great. Now you've passed. Which he was critiquing some of the other ones that perhaps do that. And he was like, no, a real certification is one where you might not pass. And to get it means that you do have a certain knowledge and you did perform.
Yeah, I will tell you, I'm sure he'd be willing to, our chairman took the exam. But what's interesting, they'll all attest to the rigor. And I can tell you that I've had treasurers that were on our board and from very big companies, I won't give any names. And they, when they knew the week was coming, they'd call me, Jim, how did I do? Or wanted me to, nope, you're going to have to pass this thing. I mean, they were sweating bullets. That's good. Because it also says to their staff and it brings credibility. Yeah, it is valuable. And it's just something we're not going to compromise on, because you're talking finance. You're talking the office of the CFO. You want people who are really well qualified to do these things. And so, as I mentioned, keeping that rigor is very important to us, maybe at the expense of, getting more people to take it. But then you devalue the brand and what it really stands for. And we're just not willing to compromise. We're not willing to compromise on, conference sessions, and we're not willing to compromise when it comes to our standards for our certifications.
And is the prep course a requirement to take the exam, or is it just highly, highly recommended because that's going to give you the details to be able to pass?
Yeah, so for the CTP, we actually do still print a body of knowledge. It's like 6 inches thick, and if you think you want to read through that, great. But we put a lot of resources into our 2 exam prep platforms, which are interactive, on demand, pre-tests, post-tests. They really help guide you through the process. That's really the preferred way to study for. The FP&A exam, we only have the exam prep platform. So unless you want to read about 60 finance books, which we reference, you could do that, or you can get the exam prep platform. We have both options. Some people like to read a book. So if you want to read the book, that's fine. Then we have review courses and things of that nature. But the exam prep platform is very interactive. And that's the way most people like to learn, and taking those pre-tests and post-tests, and then it'll identify the areas where you have competency, and then areas that will specifically say you need to go back and start to learn these concepts a little bit better. So that's the preferred method, I think, for
people can just study with the textbook, but the exam prep course is obviously going to give you it taught to you. But it's the textbook that the exams
CTP. Only the CTP has a text. The FP&A exam is the exam prep platform.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And what are the topics that you are covering that? So we, in Corporate Treasury 101, have kind of defined the 4 fundamentals of corporate treasury as I'm going to have to get this wrong. Cash management.
Cash and liquidity management.
Let me
yes.
test for this. Let me get cash and
Go
liquidity
for it yourself.
management, financial risk management. The last one's banking relations, and the third one was
Corporate something.
Yes, indeed.
Damn.
So,
Yeah, that's all It's all.
Is
that's all
that
included
what's your
in now.
structure? How do you structure corporate treasury in CTP?
You know, you're asking me a question. I have to.
Have you
I
sat
have
it
to open
yourself?
it up and look at. Yeah. No,
I'm not
I'm
doing
not.
that.
No.
It's too
Oh,
hard.
really?
Yeah, I'm too old. I can't learn it. No. I'd be happy to get our certification people on and doing separate podcasts with you in terms of all the bodies of knowledge. Both of them are pretty extensive. I'd have to have it. I mean, all of those are obviously covered, but I'd have to have all the different domains in front of me, and I wasn't that well prepared, so I didn't know we were going to get to that level of specificity. Right?
No problem. Makes sense. Okay, Jim, so how does the AFP actually ensure that the CTP certification remains relevant? Because you mentioned these 6 inches with large, body of knowledge. You mentioned that those are skills that are actually fundamentals and necessary for the treasury professional to thrive in a career, but also to bring that value to the company. 50 to 60% pass rate is absolutely crazy. It means you can't just wing it. It's like, it's a proper...
You wing it, you're going to fail.
Exactly. You're going to be part of the 40%, maybe even 50. But so I'm interested in understanding, how do you keep up to date with everything? Because obviously we didn't even touch upon the technological landscape that is ever evolving. We mentioned a few crises that happened over the last 2 decades. Those all brings a whole new waves of technologies as well, a new ways people work. You mentioned the right versus left brain, how those treasury, when they work from home 4 days a week versus when you're constantly next to your team and you have somebody you can ask all your questions with. Like, how do you keep this body of knowledge and this certification up to the standards and up to date with the industry and the actual need of the companies for a proper, efficient treasury function?
So we have an internal certification staff. We have a director of certification. That's her role, and she has 3 people that work with her. That's her expertise. So we have internal expertise. Unlike some other certifications, we, as I mentioned, update the CTP every 3 years. So that means you have a baseline for the last time the body of knowledge was updated, and then we go through a very formal job analysis where we're asking practitioners through the formal job analysis what additional roles and responsibilities they're fulfilling. It's Stacy's job to ensure that job analysis, we use psychometricians and look at, okay, since the last time this was updated. And this is important. It's a look back. It is not a look forward, because what you want to prevent from happening is for us to be putting things in there that aren't actually what the treasury function is doing. So it's not aspirational certification. It's a 3-year look back. Okay, from the time that we last updated to today, what additional knowledge, role, responsibility is that treasury function playing? And that's where we'll fill in that gap over that 3-year period. So it is not looking at, testing your knowledge on artificial intelligence, where artificial intelligence isn't part of the treasury function's day-to-day job, right? I don't want to be in a position where we're trying to, create something that isn't there. This is a look back, and so every 3 years, it's getting updated based upon what practitioners are telling us are the additional knowledge domains, or part of those domains that are changing. So again, it focuses on actually practically what you should know to be successful as a treasury professional today.
Makes a lot of sense. So it's not a buzzword certification. It's not going to be AI is taking over your role type of certification.
No,
it's much more about what's actually happening.
Correct. I mean, if AI isn't playing a role in the treasury function, then why are we testing you on the AI? Because it's not going to help you on a day-to-day basis. When we begin to see maybe the impact that AI might have on the treasury role, we'll do the look back and say, okay, now these are the skill sets you're going to need. Now, things like data analytics, communication skills, those are now all part of the certification, because we know that those are critical components of being effective as a treasury professional.
Jim, do you take stuff out? So you said
We're
you look back.
database. We're not. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, sorry. Do you take stuff out when you look back, or do you only add out of interest?
I think if regulations change, rules change, because we're looking at the regulatory environment as well. So some of that, if it's no longer applicable, that'll be taken out. Absolutely. Unfortunately, the very few things that get taken out, they tend to get added in, which is a good thing. I know they all grown. I can't believe this, but that's good for the profession, because if that book was, if it was getting smaller, we got a problem. Now that's easy for me to say because I don't have to take it, but I think it demonstrates to someone that this is a growing field in finance. So I take that as something really positive.
So in practical terms, Jim, what impact does having a CTP certification can bring to one's career? How does it impact your career?
Well, it's pretty well documented. You get it in many cases.
Perfect.
Yeah, you're going to move up in your career, and you're going to get paid more, which is probably the two most important things to people, right? And so,
Not too bad.
yeah, and if you're, some cases, it's keeping your job, but in many cases, and I tell you what, if you voluntarily take it, and you say, I want to be in Treasury, I'm going to take this exam, I'm going to take the time and to commit myself to this. What does that say to the employer? It says this person cares. This person is really dedicated to lifelong learning, which is another one of my big passions, is keeping people focused on this concept of lifelong learning. And so, the CTP is a point in time, but it demonstrates, hey, this person is really committed to the profession. And I think that's important to distinguish yourself within your organization, and it'll help you with your internal career, or it'll also help you maybe looking for that next job if that's what your focus is. But we've done the data. We know that it helps in, certainly helps in increases your salary, it increases your job prospects, and it increases your ability to move up in an organization. All pretty good things.
Yeah. You drew parallels earlier with the Harvard and Princeton conference sessions, and I guess when I think of those institutions, it comes with a reputation, right? I have seen on LinkedIn people put CTP at the end of their name. Have you heard from employers about we're looking for CTP people?
Oh, we measure that. Okay. We know we look at all the time. There's Jeff Glenzer on our team as a chief operating officer. We actually every month try to quantify with a sweep how many organizations are requiring the CTP or saying a preferred designation. We do that for both. Employer recognition is the most important component of that, because if the employer recognizes it, then guess what? The employees are going to decide to have it. So it's a two-pronged strategy to ensure that employers know about the certification, as well as for the individuals. And so it's a nice win-win situation. But yes, that's something we're always measuring and trying to see what, you'll see in how we promote it, which companies that, are. Well, a lot of times it's required or certainly preferred.
Do you see MBAs as like competition almost? Because you do sometimes see CTP or MBA. Can you call the CTP a equivalent or replacement for an MBA for a specific treasurer?
Yeah, I'm not under any illusions. I mean, if you're an organization looking for a qualified treasurer or finance person, I mean, you want to put the people that you'll consider. MBA, sure, it's a competitor. But if you're really looking for someone who actually has treasury knowledge and they pass the CTP, chances are you put the two up against one another, and that CTP is going to know a whole lot more about treasury than someone who's got the MBA. But there are many factors that a company looks at. Competition, we have to deal with the competition, and we have to distinguish the certification from other things. So that's just part of life, right?
Yeah. So, Jim, once you have the CTP, is that it? Are you set for life, or should you, and do you have to, I think you mentioned earlier the credits that you need to have, but do you have a a certain number of credits you need to still get year after year, even after you've validated the CTP. I think you also mentioned on the prep platform, have pre-exam and post-exam. Meaning even when you're certified, you probably still insist on the updating of the training and the people to make sure they have the latest knowledge. So how do that all work? And also, how do you get those credits year after year?
So, yes, it requires, it's either 42 or 48 continuing education credits over a 3-year period. Obviously, the AFP annual conference and all the things that we do get CPE credits. Well, also, our certification department will, if you applied for continuing education credits, they'll look at the curriculum. And so you can get them from other providers as well of the content. I think anyone who says, I know everything and I don't need to learn anything going forward, good luck. That's one of my big, as I mentioned, I think earlier, one of my big passions is this concept of lifelong learning and being committed to lifelong learning. I could, quote from Aristotle to Einstein to whoever you want, I think that it's both an individual motivation and I think internally organizations need to encourage it and provide the opportunity for their employees. You look at employee surveys and especially younger people coming, the millennials are not going to work for companies that aren't going to help them be successful in their jobs. You see it time and time again, and I don't blame them. And I think that, how a company makes a commitment to their individuals to help them learn, to help them be more successful, to help them learn new things and encourage, those are going to be the companies that win over the long term. And I think that's why you see 6,000 to 7,000 people come to our annual event every year. It's why we have the membership, the certification, those things continue to grow. And I think skills-based, again, if you see, there's a lot that's in the daily media about how employers really are looking at skills-based education. Do you have the actual requisite skills to be effective at these jobs? And that means, and we've identified those skill sets. We know what you're going to need to be the foundational knowledge for Treasury or the foundational knowledge for financial planning and analysis. And that's why it makes a compelling case at universities to say to them, okay, supplement your undergraduate education with a skills-based curriculum that's going to help your students be successful when they walk out of the university. So getting up there in age myself, but I'm always trying to learn. And is there a better way to do something? And I just think, quite frankly, those are the employees that I'm looking for. I don't want someone to say, I know everything. So, well, okay, if you know everything, then why are you working for me? So, that's what any employer, you would think any good manager would want people who really want to learn and to continue to learn and to voice that. So to me, it's very important. And I think, at least to the extent that I have a sounding board, it's something that I really I really try to talk about and promote to finance and treasury professionals. It's how critically important it is.
Could have not said it better. Jim, thank you so much for all the amazing insights today. Anything you would like to add about the AFP, the CTP, or any of the different points that we touch upon?
If someone's listened to this whole podcast, they're probably exhausted at listening to it. So I have nothing
likely
other than to thank you, both of you, so much for the opportunity to talk with you today. It's been really fun and great.
It was our absolute pleasure. If people would like to know more about you, the AFP, the CTP certification, where should they go?
At www.afponline.org. And if you want to get a hold of me, just send an email to that web address and I'd be happy to respond or find someone and get you the answer. Likely it won't be me being able to get you the answer, so I'll make sure it comes to the right place.
So it's perfect. We put all the links in the description. Jim, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. It's been great.